Welcome to another series of past paper walkthrough. In this case, we will go through the past papers from 2010 all the way to 2020 for AS level economics. Hopefully by the end of it, you guys should be able to know how to write an essay. You guys should be able to know what to write in your essay and where are the pitfalls, where are the most likely mistakes you will make. Just like the A2 year, I will not be going through section number A of your paper number 4. I'll be concentrating on paper number 2, and I'll not be going through section number A because the answers are given in the mark scheme and they tend to be pretty straightforward. So I hope that's pretty straightforward and easy for you guys. I'm focusing on section number B because the mark scheme doesn't really provide much help for some reason, and it is this section which carry the 50% marks of your exam. In paper number 2 of your economics AS level is worth 40 marks. From this 40 mark, 20 mark are for section number B, so they carry 50% of your marks. So we'll be focusing on section number B, the essay part, and hopefully by the end of the series you guys should be able to have a very good idea of what to expect and how to write different past papers. Now in this video we'll not start past papers, but we'll go through some of the basic things that you guys need to know for your examination. We'll go through general trends you have in your past papers. We will go through which topics you should pick generally and which topic you should generally avoid, and we'll go through some misconceptions students have when they write essays. So it's gonna be a long video, so because you have lots to cover. So yeah, let's start. There are few disclaimers I need to make before we do that. Firstly, you guys need to understand that AS level essays are much different from A2. The reason for that is in A2 you have fewer topics, but they are more bulky, and as a result in your essays you get questions which are generic. You can write a lot about the topic because the questions tend to be generic. In AS level, most of your content you'll go through the basics of economics. In chapter number 1, 2, 3, 1 to 5, you're going through the basics of economics. You're going through basic terminologies, basic concepts, and basic ideas. As a result, when it comes to your essays, it is very difficult to find a question which is specific to a specific topic only. In most cases, in a given question, you will have multiple topics put together. You will be asked to discuss 2 topics in a single essay, simply because the topics in AS level are not that bulky to have a separate question by themselves. So we will go through what are the likely scenarios you can have. The second disclaimer I have to make is that your AS level essays are much easier than your A2 level essays, because you only have 20 marks, and for question number A you don't need to do any evaluation. In paper number 2 in your essay section you have 2 questions. One is your not comprehension, data response question, and second, section B, is your essay. In section B you have 3 questions and you have 1 question to choose from those 3, and within each question you have 2 parts, A and B. Part A is worth 8 marks and part B is worth 12 marks. For part A you don't need any evaluation, so that's good news because that's usually the most difficult part. And for question number 2 you do need some evaluation. You do need some evaluation, so it's much easier than your A2. So by the end of it you guys should be able to have a good idea of how to write essays. So let's start. The first topic that we discuss in your book, so I'll go through different topics you have in your books, and I'll write down the likely scenarios, likely questions you get in past papers from these specific each of these topics. The first topic you study in your book, obviously these are not all of them are not in chronological order, so but nonetheless the first topic you study in your book is about price mechanism. You will be asked in the examination. Now these are the likely questions you get in the examination. These are the questions you will notice from 2010 to 2020. If you observe all the past papers, you'll notice some general trends. And one of them is that whenever they ask about price mechanism, whenever they ask questions related to price mechanism, they'll ask you 3. They could be any 3 type of question. First one could be explain. So they'll ask you to explain what is price mechanism. So for example, you have a situation given, the free market allocates resources based upon price mechanism. Explain price mechanism. This question will probably be for 8 marks, and you have to go through how does the price mechanism work. Hopefully we'll go through each and every single topic in the future videos, but for now I just want to get through some basic stuff. The second likely questions you get about price mechanism is comparison. So you will be asked in the examination, for example, the command economy allocates resources, the government allocates resources, and not the price mechanism. How do we compare that with price mechanism? How is their allocation different from the allocation done using price mechanism? Is there any benefit? Is there any loss? The third type of question you get from price mechanism is about advantage and disadvantage. So what are the advantages of price mechanism as a method to allocate resources, and what are the disadvantages? In this specific this question is usually connected with the idea of merit good, demerit good, public good, and private good. So you have to discuss about them in relationship with these. These are the 3 type of questions you'll probably get in your exam. You might get in your exam when it comes to price mechanisms. Again, these are general trends I want you guys to keep in mind, so when you're preparing for the essays, you have these topics, you have these general questions already understood, so that when we actually start the papers, you guys have you guys already have a precursor, you guys already have an idea of what to write, what are general things that you have to write so that you get maximum marks as possible. So the second topic in your book is about elasticity. Now elasticities is a topic which involves lots of calculation. As a result, you don't get much elasticity questions in your section number B of your paper number 2. Now you might get some question which is in combination with some other topic. For example, elasticity, they will usually combine it with demerit and merit good. They'll usually combine it with public and private good. But elasticity alone as a topic, it's very difficult to get a question specific to this topic only, because it involves calculation, it's very theoretical, and it's very straightforward as a concept. So elasticity is a topic you guys need to keep in mind for paper number 1. But for paper number 2, yeah, know the formulas, but don't really get into elasticities, because you don't really get questions related to that specifically. But sometimes you do get questions, and the type of questions you get about them is usually comparison. So they'll give you 2 examples. They'll say, look, here's rice and here's, let's say, chocolate, and due to inflation the prices have risen. What would be the effect on the demand of rice and chocolate? So you would have to discuss about inflation first, and then you would have to discuss about elasticity. You have to discuss about the price demand will depend on the elasticity. You talk about inelastic materials, you talk about elastic materials. You might have to use some equations, but you guys get the idea. You will generally get comparison questions. Other than this, you might be asked to calculate elasticity. Now this is very rare. I haven't found, except for maybe a couple papers. It's very rare, these type of questions where they ask you to specifically calculate the elasticity or draw graphs to calculate the elasticity. So ignore this one. There's only one main type of questions you get when it comes to elasticity in your exam, which is comparison. The third topic you have in your book, the third big topic you have in your book, is about microeconomic intervention. There are only 2 things that you get asked in section number B when it comes to this topic. First one is your maximum price and minimum price. So they'll ask you what are the benefits of maximum price, draw a graph to describe, or draw a graph to explain. What are the benefits of minimum pricing? Why are minimum pricing used? Why are maximum pricing used? You get the point. They'll ask you about maximum and minimum pricing. That's one of the questions you get in your exam, one of type of question you get in your exam. The second type of question in this topic you'll get in your section number B of paper number 2 is about comparison. So is price ceiling how do I put it, putting maximum prices or putting minimum prices, is it always the best case to control pricing, or is it always the best case to allocate resources, or whatever the question might be. You'll be asked to compare maximum premium prices compared to other possible options or policies, which could include subsidizing, which could include taxation. You can have any comparison, but you'll be asked a comparison type. You could be asked a comparison type question when it comes to maximum and minimum pricing. Other than this, in macroeconomics, you don't really get any essay-based question when it comes to this topic. The third topic is about international trade and protectionism. Of course, this is your macroeconomy. And in this entire topic, there's one main thing you have to keep in mind, which is about tariffs. Now, tariff graphs tend to be complicated, they tend to be difficult, they tend to be hard to explain. So be careful when you study tariff graph. Tariffs, subsidies. Now, subsidies, you could argue whether that's part of microeconomy or macroeconomy, it really depends. And the third one is about taxation. Taxation, I guess, is part of microeconomics. I guess this needs to go over here. Yep, taxation, taxation, subsidies, and tariffs. So you'll be asked questions where they would ask you to argue. For example, discuss the benefits of protectionism on a country, or the disadvantage on a country, or the benefits on a country. Or they'll ask you, what are the, for example, a country is suffering with current account deficit and they want to reduce imports. So what are the possible mechanisms they could use to reduce their imports? So you have to talk about tariffs, you have to talk about import quotas and those other mechanisms governments use to reduce imports. Again, in this topic, your questions are generally related to discussing different methods. How do tariffs work? How can they prevent? How do import quotas work? How do they prevent? How do export quotas work? How do they prevent imports and stuff? And generally, when it comes to section B, I generally advise my student not to attempt these type of questions. Again, you have 3 questions, you have to choose just one. And I generally, recommend my students not to attempt these type of questions. International trade and protectionism and exchange rate and balance of payment. These 2 topics I recommend you guys to avoid if you have any other choice out of the 3 questions, because these 2 topics tend to be difficult to understand at first. When you get to A2 level, you will understand them clearly, but for in AS level, they are not that easy to understand. Also, they are not that easy to explain, especially when it comes to balance of payment and exchange rate. These 2 topics are generally hard to explain theoretically in an essay format. But if you are someone who is well versed with the topic and you have a very good idea of what you are writing, then go for it. But generally, I would recommend you guys not to attempt questions when you get questions related to these 2 topics. Then you have your last 3 topics: inflation, goods, and markets. Inflation, there are 2 types of questions you will get in your exam. First one, how to measure. So explain how is inflation measured in an economy, and you can talk about the process of how inflation is calculated. You can talk about the advantages, whether it's a good method, or disadvantage, whether it's a bad method, but you get the point. You'll be asked about how is inflation calculated. The second thing is about how can we control inflation. So what measures can the governments do to control inflation? Is inflation always bad? Is inflation always good? Is deflation bad? Is deflation good? You have to discuss about those things. The third type of topic you get about inflation is about whether inflation can be beneficial or harmful for an economy. Now we know that the inflation, now obviously you study more about this in A2 level, but slow and steady inflation is actually beneficial for the economy, because it allows the wage rates to increase for the employees working in the economy, especially daily wages. So you could be asked about it, but the third type of these questions are generally not that common in AS level. So again, how is inflation measured, and what measures can government do to control inflation? Of course, all of these things that I'm talking about, I'll go in detail later on in the coming series. In this video, I just wanted to go through the intro and help you guys understand the type of questions you will likely get in your examination, so that you are prepared for that in advance. The entire goal of this series is to convert economics into mathematics. You see, in maths, when you get a question, you know what formula to use. If you are someone who is a good student who has studied the topic well, you will know which formula to use, you will know how to use it, and you'll also know where are the pitfalls, in what scenarios can you make mistakes. The thing is, as soon as you see the question, you get an idea of how to solve it, how to write it down. I want to make economics similar to that when it comes to essays, especially in your examination, because when students see an essay question, they freak out. They don't know what to write, how to write, and they simply start, spilling everything that they know about the examination, about the topic, which is not a good idea. And I would certainly discourage, this type of behavior. So the idea is that by understanding general trends, by preparing for them, and by understanding how to write essays, and by understanding like where do students make mistake, you guys will be able to look at economics essays just like your mathematics. The second last topic is about goods. Simple topic. You'll be asked about what are public goods. You could be asked about what are public goods, what are private goods, differentiate between them, or what is the problem, what is wrong, what is the problem with public good. You have to talk about the tragedy of commons. You talk about why no one would want to pay for public goods if they are available. You could be asked about differentiation between public good and private good, or you could be asked in the exemption about merit good and demerit good. Merit goods, demerit goods. You could be asked about the differentiation between them. You would probably need to take some examples to explain that, and you could be asked about what are the problems with demerit goods and what are the problems with merit goods. You have to talk about the information failure. So when there's information failure, people consume more demerit good, they consume less merit good, and so on and so forth. Again, when it comes to good, these are the two questions that you always get in the exam when it comes to essays. Either differentiate or explain why public goods have problem compared to private goods, and talk about merit and demerit good with some example, or they'll give a specific scenario. For example, hospitals don't have the same funding compared to, let's say, I don't know, fast food industry or something. And why is that? So you talk about merit good, demerit good, information failure, so on and so forth. And the last topic you have in your essay, you could get in your essay, is about markets, about free market, about command economy, or mixed market, or about command economies. So you'll be asked about the advantages of free market. You could be asked about the disadvantages of command economy. The basic stuff, advantages, disadvantages, which one is better, which one is worse, evaluate questions like that, which are very theoretical, and you just have to memorize them. So these are all the topics, these are all the type of questions you might get in your exam. So I want you guys to pause it and write them down so that you can prepare for them. You can already prepare an essay, or write few paragraphs about them beforehand, so that when you do get a questions, any of these type of questions, you have a very good idea of how to answer them. But we'll go through the past papers from next video onwards, hopefully, and I'll also be making a walkthrough of the entire book. This specific book, if you guys have it, because that's the one I studied. And hopefully it will become easier for you for your October session. My goal is by October session, I should have an entire playlist, and anyone who is following along should be able to get 80% marks easily. Right, so last thing before we leave is about the general misconceptions students have when it comes to examinations. Certain confusion students make, certain problems, misconceptions kids have when it comes to examinations. The first one is, and the most obvious one, is that students assume that you need to have an essay structure. Now, this is correct. I understand where they're coming from, but you need to understand that in your section number B, you have two questions. One is 8 marks and one is 12 marks. For 8-mark question, it's very theoretical. You just need to explain the concept and do it properly. You don't need an essay structure. You don't need 2 pages, 3 pages. You don't need that. Even half-page answer, as long as it's explained properly, it will do fine. So you need an essay structure for the second question number part B, which is of 12 marks. But because it's AS level, and because the topics are very simple, and it comes to how much, because the topics are simple compared to A2, you don't really need that strong essay structure. Even a simple essay structure will work. We'll go through different type of essay structure which you could use in the examination, but just a general misconception that students believe that they need a very strong essay structure, which is a misconception. Yes, essay structure is important. It is good if you do it, but it's not the end all and be all, and it's not something that you need to pay much more attention compared to the concept in the book. The second misconception students have when it comes to essays is that they believe that an essay doesn't involve diagrams, or you don't really need diagrams. Diagrams are extremely important in your exam, especially when it comes to your essays. If you have an 8-mark question and if you have a good diagram, you will get 4 marks. You will get 4 marks easily. If you have a 12-mark question, if you have a good diagram, you will get you should get 4 marks easily too, if you have a good, well explained diagram. Of course, you don't have a diagram for every single question, every single topic, but if you don't have a diagram, you can simply take a theoretical example. For example, for instance, in your merit code, there is no diagram that you can use to explain the topic, but you can simply make an example by your own. You can talk about medicine, you can talk about fitness and gyms and those type of services that are merit codes, and as long as you do it properly, you still get 4 marks. So diagrams are very important. The third misconception students have is that they think that you can mug up topics. So what students do is that they will go through different topics, they'll still try to memorize everything they can, and they try to spill it out in the examination, hoping that does do any benefit, which is wrong. The examiners want you to have want you to be very specific and want you to be very, very concise when it comes to different topics when you're explaining them. So this doesn't really work. So hopefully, as we go along the series, you guys should have an idea of how to write the essays, and hopefully you should be able to get high marks in them.